Let me ask you something simple, but powerful. How many of your daily choices are shaped by habits you never even questioned? Maybe you've had mornings where your mind starts racing the moment you open your eyes. You reach for your phone. Your thoughts jump to what's next. What's wrong? Who said what yesterday? Before the day even begins, your inner peace is already under siege. Now here's what the Stoics knew, and what most people were never taught. Your mind is not something you fix when it's broken. It's something you train quietly, daily, through the habits you build. Greatness, real, grounded greatness, doesn't come from raw talent, IQ, or perfect circumstances. It's built from small, deliberate disciplines that no one applauds, the habits you repeat when no one's watching, the inner rituals that shape your emotional resilience, your mental clarity, your ability to respond rather than react. Marcus Aurelius didn't become one of the most powerful and respected emperors by accident. He trained his mind through unseen routines, journaling, reflection, intentional pauses. Epictetus, a former slave, didn't teach philosophy from theory. He embodied it through daily self-mastery. This video is about those habits, not the ones you read in self-help checklists, but the hidden Stoic disciplines, subtle, timeless, transformative, that quietly rewire the way you think, feel, and live. And here's the truth. By the end of this video, you may realize you don't need to overhaul your entire life. You just need to shift a few silent habits that quietly run the show. Because it's not about becoming someone new. It's about uncovering the strength, clarity, and peace that have been within you all along. So let's begin, one shift at a time. And it all starts with a habit so simple, yet so powerful. You'll wonder why you didn't use it sooner. Part 1. Pause before you react, the Stoic reset button. Have you ever said something in the heat of the moment and regretted it almost immediately? We've all been there. A sharp comment, a snap judgment, a reaction that felt justified in the moment, but left behind a trail of tension, guilt, or misunderstanding. Now imagine this instead, a space, just 3 seconds of silence between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. That tiny gap, that's where your power begins. The Stoics believe that true strength isn't in how loud you speak, how quickly you respond, or how passionately you argue. It's in how well you can pause. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man in the world at the time, used a simple tool to help him create this space: journaling. Before reacting to betrayal, stress, or chaos, he would write, not to show off his wisdom, but to reflect, to slow his emotional impulse and choose his response with clarity. This pause wasn't weakness, it was mastery. In today's world where everyone's encouraged to clap back, speak your mind, and never hold back, the art of restraint seems almost forgotten. But the Stoics knew he who rushes to react has already given away his power. So here's the habit. Before you speak, decide, or act, breathe. Just 3 seconds. Inhale, observe, then respond. Not to control others, but to stay in control of yourself. This small pause rewires your entire relationship with conflict, with emotion, with yourself. It creates a moment of freedom where you're no longer a prisoner of impulse, but a master of intentionality. Think about the last time you were triggered. What would have changed if you had just paused? Over time, this simple habit doesn't just change your reactions, it changes your character. You begin to show up calmer, wiser, more rooted. And that calm presence, it speaks louder than any reaction ever could. So the next time life presses your buttons, don't push back. Press pause. That's the first Stoic habit. and it's the quiet foundation of mental freedom. Part 2. Train the inner observer. Be the watcher, not the wave. Let me ask you something. When emotions hit you, do you become them? When anger shows up, do you find yourself being angry or simply feeling it? There's a powerful difference between the two. One traps you, the other frees you. This is what the Stoics understood so well. They trained themselves not to be the wave crashing in the storm, but the watcher observing from the shore. They knew that just because a thought or feeling arises doesn't mean it defines who you are. Imagine this. You wake up feeling anxious. Your mind starts spiraling. I'm not good enough. This will go wrong. I can't handle today. Without awareness, you start identifying with those thoughts. You become the anxiety. It colors your mood, your tone, your decisions. But what if you paused and simply said, I notice I'm feeling anxious today. That subtle shift is everything. You're no longer drowning in the emotion. You're standing beside it, watching, naming, choosing how to respond. The Stoics called this the development of the inner observer, a part of you that watches your mind without judgment, that notices your anger without becoming rage, that witnesses fear without turning it into panic. It's not about denying emotions. It's about not letting them hijack your identity. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This strength begins with awareness. It begins with naming what's happening inside you, without becoming it. Think of your thoughts and emotions like clouds drifting across the sky. You are not the clouds. You are the sky that holds them. So here's the practice. Next time something triggers you, say it out loud or in your mind. I'm noticing frustration, or there's fear arising. It sounds simple, but it's one of the most powerful mental habits you can develop. Because the moment you observe, you're no longer fully caught. You're free to choose. Over time, this habit transforms your relationship with yourself. You become less reactive, more reflective. You respond with wisdom instead of impulse. Train the inner observer, and you become less of a slave to the storm and more of a calm presence within it. That's the second Stoic habit, and it quietly changes the way you feel, think, and lead your life. Part 3. Let go of needing to be right. Choose truth over ego. How often do we argue not to understand, but to defend our pride? You've probably felt it before. That subtle tension in your chest when someone challenges your belief. Your instinct kicks in, not to listen, but to win. Not to understand, but to protect your identity. The Stoics saw this for what it really is, a trap of the ego. To them, wisdom wasn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It wasn't about proving others wrong or always having the final say. Wisdom was about being teachable, being open, and most importantly, being more loyal to truth than to your own opinion. Marcus Aurelius said it simply, if someone can prove me wrong, I will gladly change. It is the truth I seek, and the truth never harmed anyone. That's not weakness, that's strength, because it takes real courage to say, I might be wrong. It takes inner security to admit, I don't know. It takes humility to ask, can you help me see this differently? And yet this is exactly where clarity begins. Let's face it, so many of the arguments we get into aren't really about truth. They're about control, about fear, about being seen as smart, capable, respected. But when your self-worth depends on always being right, you're setting yourself up for a fragile life. Because one challenge feels like an attack. One correction feels like rejection. The Stoics invite us to shift this mindset, to make a habit of pausing, breathing, and asking, am I more interested in protecting my ego or learning something I didn't know? You see, every time you release the need to be right, you gain access to something deeper, real growth, real freedom, real wisdom. So here's a practice. The next time you're in a disagreement, try saying, that's an interesting point. Let me think about that. Or even, I could be wrong. Can you walk me through how you see it? These small statements disarm conflict. They invite collaboration. They build relationships grounded in truth, not tension. And over time, you don't just avoid unnecessary arguments. You develop a mind that's agile, grounded, and open. You build a self that doesn't crumble when challenged. You grow into a person who leads not with stubbornness, but with stillness. Because the wisest people aren't those who always know they're right. They're the ones who are willing to find out if they're wrong. Let go of being right, and you might finally start seeing clearly. Part 4. Filter what you feed your mind. A Stoic diet for the soul. If you eat junk food every day, your body eventually breaks down. Now ask yourself, what happens when your mind consumes junk every day? We live in a world that floods us with noise. Endless headlines, viral outrage, opinions, arguments, alerts. Your phone buzzes before you even open your eyes. You scroll through 100 updates before brushing your teeth, and somehow we wonder why we feel so scattered, so anxious, so drained. But here's a truth the Stoics knew long before smartphones existed. What you allow into your mind becomes your life. Just like food fuels the body, information fuels your consciousness. And if you're not intentional about your inputs, the world will choose them for you, usually in the form of fear, distraction, and urgency. The Stoics didn't have Netflix or social media, but they understood this principle deeply. That's why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to guard his mind against unnecessary thoughts. He didn't want his inner world shaped by noise. He wanted it shaped by virtue, clarity, and reason. So here's the practice. Treat your attention like a sacred space. Instead of reaching for your phone the moment you wake up, reach for stillness. Instead of reacting to every ping and buzz, build in moments of silence. Instead of passively consuming outrage or gossip, actively choose something that nourishes you. Like a few lines from Epictetus or a quiet reflection in your journal. This isn't about being uninformed. It's about being unpolluted. You don't need to know everything that's happening everywhere, every second. You need to know what matters, what you can control, and what aligns with your values. Ask yourself, is what I'm consuming helping me grow? Is it making me clearer or more confused? Is it feeding fear or cultivating wisdom? Because the content you consume shapes your beliefs shape your emotions, and your emotions guide your decisions, often without you realizing it. So don't just go on a physical diet, go on a mental one. Start small, turn off non-essential notifications, unfollow accounts that spike your anxiety. Dedicate just 5 minutes each morning to read something timeless, not trending. Over time, you'll begin to notice something powerful. A quiet mental space where stress used to be. A sharper clarity where confusion once lived. A deeper steadiness in the way you show up, because now your mind is being nourished by depth, not noise. And that's how a Stoic lives. Not by tuning out the world completely, but by choosing what's worth tuning into. Part 5. Ask better questions, not give faster answers. The Stoic way to mental clarity. We live in a world addicted to quick answers. Got a question? Google it. Hear a comment? React instantly. Faced with a disagreement? Defend your point before you've even heard theirs. But here's what the Stoics knew long before the internet existed. It's not the speed of your answers that shapes your wisdom. It's the depth of your questions. When you rush to respond, you often bypass the most important moment, the pause, the space where clarity lives. That space is where a question can change everything. Marcus Aurelius, in his journals, didn't write answers. He wrote reflections, doubts, honest inquiries. He wasn't trying to look smart. He was trying to get real with himself. So the practice is this. Don't be the person who always has an answer. Be the person who asks better questions. When you're feeling angry, ask, what's really bothering me right now? When you're offended, ask, is this about them or is this touching something in me? When you're overwhelmed, ask, what actually matters today? Because here's the truth. Most of our suffering doesn't come from the world. It comes from the beliefs we carry without questioning. We believe we must always be right. We believe success must look a certain way. We believe that discomfort is something to avoid, not examine. But what if you paused and simply asked, is this belief still serving me? Did I choose this story or did it choose me? What would a wiser version of me ask right now? Questions like these aren't soft. They're powerful. They interrupt mental autopilot. They slow down reaction and invite reflection. They don't just shift how you think. They shift who you become. In Stoicism, philosophy isn't just reading quotes. It's wrestling with your own thoughts. So if you want to upgrade your life, don't just look for better advice. Ask better questions. Questions that humble you, that stretch you, that make you uncomfortable in the best possible way. Because in the end, fast answers might win arguments, but slow questions win clarity. And clarity is what brings freedom. So the next time your mind races toward a reaction, stop, breathe, and ask, what's the deeper question here? That one habit alone might change your entire way of thinking. Part 6. Build solitude into your schedule. Make time for the inner voice. In today's noisy world, silence is rare, but to a Stoic, it's sacred. Think about it. When was the last time you were truly alone? Not just physically, but mentally. No screens, no scrolling, no conversations. Just you and your own thoughts. For the ancient Stoics, solitude wasn't a luxury. It was a necessity. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, ruled over millions, yet still carved out time each day to write, to reflect, to be alone with his mind. Why? Because wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers, and to hear it, we have to get quiet. Here's the modern dilemma. We fill every gap with noise. Podcasts during breakfast, emails on the toilet, TikTok before bed. Even our moments of rest are saturated with stimulation. But here's a hard truth. A distracted mind cannot be a wise mind. Solitude isn't about isolation or becoming a hermit. It's about creating space for clarity. It's where your real thoughts, unfiltered, uncomfortable, and profound, can finally surface. It's where you start to notice what truly matters and what doesn't. So what if, starting today, you built solitude into your life on purpose? Not as an accident, but as a daily ritual. Not when you're burnt out, but when you still have energy to think. Try this. Schedule 1 hour each day with no screens, no voices, just you, a notebook, a walk, or a quiet corner. You don't need a cabin in the mountains. You need intention. Let that be the time you reflect on your day. Ask yourself what you're avoiding. Reconnect with your values. Untangle your mind before life tangles it further. At first, it'll feel uncomfortable. You might fidget. You'll feel the pull to check something real quick. But sit through it. Because on the other side of that discomfort is insight. And insight is what turns ordinary people into grounded, thoughtful leaders. Remember, silence is not empty. It's full of answers. The world will never stop demanding your attention. That's why you must protect your attention. Build solitude like you build anything that matters, with structure, repetition, and care. Because in solitude, you don't just hear your own voice, you rediscover it. And over time, this simple habit doesn't just make you calmer, it makes you wiser. Part 7. Practice premeditatio malorum. Visualize the storm before it hits. Most people spend their days hoping nothing goes wrong. But the Stoics, they spent their time preparing, not out of fear, but out of strength. There's a powerful practice in Stoicism called premeditatio malorum, which means the premeditation of evils. It's the art of imagining the storm before it arrives, not to become anxious, but to become calm. It might sound strange at first. Why would you spend time thinking about losing your job, your money, your comfort, or even someone you love? Because when you face your fears in the mind, they lose their power over your life. Seneca once advised, "He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand." In other words, what you rehearse mentally, you can endure more gracefully in reality. Here's the truth most of us don't like to admit. Life is unpredictable. The project fails. The market crashes. People leave. Illness strikes. And when it does, those who are mentally unprepared often panic or collapse. But the Stoic doesn't pretend the world is perfect. They prepare for its imperfection with courage and clarity. Imagine waking up each day and briefly asking yourself, what if I lost everything I'm clinging to today? How would I respond? What if this deal falls through? Can I still show up with integrity? If I face rejection, can I still return to my values? These aren't depressing thoughts. They're strengthening ones. Because here's the paradox. When you face what could go wrong, you become more grateful for what is going right. You don't take people for granted. You don't assume success is guaranteed. You stop chasing control and start building inner steadiness. Premeditatio malorum isn't about becoming numb. It's about becoming deeply alive. You learn to stop living in denial and start living with deliberate awareness. So try this. Each morning, before the rush begins, take 60 seconds to picture one thing going wrong, and then see yourself responding with grace. Not panic, not blame, but presence. That's the muscle we're building here. Resilience through readiness. And over time, you don't just survive life's chaos. You meet it with calm, because the storms will come. But a prepared mind, it doesn't get washed away. It becomes the anchor for everyone else. Part 8, journal with brutal honesty. Face the truth you keep avoiding. Most people think journaling is just about reflection, writing what happened today, listing what you're grateful for, documenting some thoughts. But for the Stoics, journaling wasn't a diary. It was a mirror, a place where they confronted themselves without filters, without denial, without sugarcoating. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations for the world. He wrote them for himself, to challenge his own thinking, to face his ego, and to return to clarity. So the question is, what if your journal wasn't just a record of your day, but a space where you said the things you're afraid to admit out loud? What if it became a place of truth? Because here's the thing, what you don't write down often ends up running your life. The fear you're ignoring, the resentment you're bearing, the desires you don't want to admit, it doesn't go away. It festers in silence. But the moment you write it, raw, messy, honest, You take back your power. You shine light on the shadows that quietly influence your choices. Try this one powerful prompt. What truth am I currently avoiding? Let that question sit with you for a moment. Don't rush. Don't judge. Just listen. Maybe it's that you're not happy in a role you've outgrown. Maybe it's that your relationship needs an honest conversation. Or maybe deep down, you know you're capable of more, but you're afraid to admit how much you've been holding back. When you journal with brutal honesty, you don't just download thoughts. You reset your alignment. You catch yourself before you drift too far from your values. You begin to see patterns, excuses, false stories you've told yourself for years. And no, it's not always comfortable, but it's freeing because the truth, when faced, doesn't destroy you. It rebuilds you stronger, clearer, lighter. So here's your challenge. Open a notebook tonight, just one page. Write down that one question. What truth am I avoiding? Then write, not to impress, not to fix, but to see. You might be surprised how much clarity lives just beneath the surface of your honesty. Part 9. Master the art of detachment. Freedom begins when clinging ends. Have you ever noticed how the tighter we cling to something, the more anxious we become? We hold on to relationships we've outgrown. We obsess over goals that no longer align with who we are. We chase certainty in a world that's always changing. And in doing so, we suffer, not because life is cruel, but because we refuse to let go. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't preach emotional coldness, but emotional clarity. And one of the clearest truths they taught is this: attachment is not the same as love. It's not the same as dedication or care. Attachment is when your peace depends on the outcome. And that's when you lose your freedom. Epictetus put it beautifully. Don't say, I lost it. Say, it was returned to the universe. This mindset changes everything. Think about it. What if you stopped viewing losses as failures and started seeing them as natural returns? You didn't lose that opportunity. It wasn't stolen. It simply fulfilled its time in your life, and now it's gone back to where it came from. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care deeply, but without gripping so tightly that your well-being is tied to it. It's the ability to say, I love this, but I don't need it to be whole. I welcome this, but I don't fear its end. That's emotional maturity. One way to practice this: ask yourself, am I afraid of losing this, or am I simply grateful to experience it for now? That question alone can soften your grip. When you detach, you're not giving up. You're choosing peace over obsession, presence over possession, wisdom over fear. And over time, this habit builds inner strength you can't fake. You no longer chase people who don't see your worth. You no longer beg life to be fair. You meet it with grace. You stop trying to hold everything together, and you let things fall where they may, because you trust yourself to rise no matter what stays or goes. That's the quiet power of detachment. So the next time you feel something slipping away, pause, breathe, and instead of saying, I lost it, say gently, it was returned to the universe. And watch how your heart softens, how your mind clears, and how, without clinging, you become free. Part 10. Focus on the circle of control. The golden rule of inner peace. Let's be honest, life can feel overwhelming. The news cycle, other people's behavior, delays, rejections, uncertainty. It's easy to get lost in the swirl of things you can't control. But what if I told you that most of your emotional exhaustion doesn't come from life itself? It comes from focusing on the wrong things. The Stoics had a name for this mistake: trying to control what was never yours. And their solution? One of the most powerful habits you'll ever build. Know your circle of control and stay inside it. Here's what that means. You can't control how someone else speaks to you, but you can control how you respond. You can't control the economy, the weather, or your past, but you can control what you focus on today, your mindset, your choices, your effort, and that's where freedom lives. Think of it like this. Your energy is currency. Every moment you're spending it, either on things that fuel your growth or things that drain it. When you obsess over other people's actions, you go broke inside. But when you ask, what's one small thing I can do right now? You reclaim your power. It's not about ignoring the world. It's about not letting the chaos outside hijack the calm inside. Marcus Aurelius practiced this every day. In the middle of war, betrayal, and political madness, he wrote to himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And he was right. The more you come back to what you can control, the less you'll need the world to behave a certain way for you to feel okay. This habit is deceptively simple, yet life-changing. The next time you're frustrated or overwhelmed, pause. Don't ask, why is this happening? Ask instead, what part of this is mine to handle? What can I shift, even if it's just my perspective? That shift in focus, from blame to action, is the birthplace of resilience. Over time, you don't just respond better, you live better. More grounded, more empowered, more peaceful in a world that rarely is. So draw a circle around what's truly yours and give your energy to that. It's not just a Stoic lesson. It's the blueprint for a steady, powerful life. Part 11. Live as if you've already died. The Stoic way to wake up fully alive. Here's a question we rarely ask, but one that changes everything. What if today was your last day alive? Not in a dramatic, panic-inducing way, but in a quiet, clarifying one. The Stoics practiced something called memento mori, a daily meditation on death. Not to become morbid or afraid, but to remember how temporary, how fragile, how precious this life actually is. When you live as if you've already died, something powerful happens. The small stuff loses its grip. The noise fades. What matters becomes unmistakably clear. You stop postponing the conversation you need to have. You stop numbing yourself with distractions. You stop waiting for some perfect time to finally start living. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote to himself, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." It wasn't a threat. It was a wake-up call, not to fear death, but to use it as a mirror that asks, are you spending your days on what truly matters? Are you saying what you need to say? Are you becoming who you came here to be? Because the truth is, we all live like we have time, but no one ever really knows how much they have left. And that's what makes this habit so powerful. When you begin your day with the question, if this were my last sunrise, would I be proud of how I'm living? It reshapes your priorities. You speak more kindly. You listen more deeply. You let go more easily. You start showing up not for some distant future, but for now. This isn't about being reckless. It's about being intentional. It's about giving your full attention to the life that's happening right in front of you, not the life you're endlessly planning for. So take a breath. Look around. This moment, it's not a rehearsal. It's not a warm-up. It's your real life, and it's happening now. Over time, this habit of remembering death doesn't lead to despair. It leads to deep presence, to courage, to a kind of gratitude that doesn't need grand gestures, just a quiet awareness that you're still here. So live like it matters, because it does. Live like it's your last. And paradoxically, that's how you finally begin to feel fully, joyfully, radically alive. Sharma Part 12, Choose Virtue Over Outcome, the inner compass that never fails. Let's be honest, most of us are taught to chase results. We're praised when we win. We're judged when we fall short. From school grades to job promotions, from likes to followers, it's always about the outcome. But here's the Stoic twist that most people never hear. Your peace doesn't come from the result. It comes from how you showed up. Stoics like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus believe that real success isn't measured by what happens to you, but by who you choose to be in every moment. You don't control the weather, the market, or other people's reactions, but you do control your character. You control whether you act with wisdom, whether you speak with honesty, whether you respond with resilience and restraint. Those are virtues, and to the Stoics, they're worth more than gold. So when life throws something unexpected your way, don't ask, did I win? Ask, did I stay true to my values? Because that's what builds a life of strength, not chasing what's outside of you, but anchoring yourself in what's unshakable inside. Virtue is your inner compass, and when you follow it, you may not always get what you want, but you'll always walk away with your self-respect intact. Think about the person you admire most. Is it because of their wealth, their titles, or is it because of how they carried themselves when things got hard? We remember the steady ones, the ones who held their ground when others lost theirs, the ones who chose what's right, even when it wasn't easy. And here's the beauty. You don't have to be perfect to practice virtue. You just have to be committed. Every day is training, not training to impress the world, but training to stay calm, honest, fair, and strong, no matter what happens. And over time, something shifts. You stop obsessing over the finish line, and you start falling in love with the process of becoming. You live better. You feel lighter. You gain the kind of quiet confidence that no trophy can give you. So today, don't ask life to give you a perfect outcome. Ask yourself, can I show up with virtue no matter what happens next? Because that's where real power lives. And that's how you begin to live a life that's not just impressive, but truly meaningful. Build, don't chase. Let's take a deep breath together. You've just walked through 12 Stoic habits that weren't taught in school, but they were lived quietly, powerfully, by the wisest minds in history. And now the question is, what will you do with them? Here's the truth most people miss. You don't need to transform your entire life overnight. You don't need to be perfect, impressive, or endlessly productive. What you need is a quiet, consistent practice. A commitment to showing up for yourself each day with clarity, calm, and courage. One pause before you react. One moment of stillness in a noisy world. One choice to respond, not explode. That's where strength begins, not in grand gestures, but in daily discipline. You see, Stoicism was never meant to be a cold, intellectual exercise. It's not about being emotionless or detached from the world. It's about being rooted in yourself, being so grounded that you don't get knocked over by life's storms, being so awake that you're no longer driven by ego, fear, or chaos. Stoicism is presence. It's power without noise. It's doing what's right, even when no one's watching. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need external permission to begin. No one else has to understand your journey. You just have to choose one habit. Start small, stay steady, and let time shape the rest. Because here's what happens when you live like this. You stop chasing approval. You stop needing control. You stop running after a life that always feels just out of reach. Instead, something shifts inside you. You become calm, but not passive, focused, but not frantic, grounded, but still growing. And without trying to impress anyone, you quietly become the kind of person people admire. Not for your words, but for your presence. Not for your ambition, but for your depth. Because when you build your life on principles instead of pressure, you don't just attract success, you embody it. Not loud, not rushed, but clear, steady, and powerful in a way most people never even notice until they feel it. So as we close this chapter, I'll leave you with this. You don't need more motivation. You don't need a perfect plan. You need a simple habit, a clear mind, and a deep reason why. The Stoics didn't wait for the world to calm down. They became the calm in the middle of the world. And now, so can you. Start small. Stay steady. Watch who you become.